Hey, I'm Josh, and this is Voices from the Field. In today's interview, we're going to hear from a seasoned pastor within Next Gen Ministries. He's run the gauntlet of youth, young adults, and now he actually works within camps as a lead speaker for many of them. He has been doing this for years and has seen the highs and the lows, the successes and the failures that come with creating a healthy volunteer culture. I got the opportunity to talk to him and hear some of the keys that he has learned to build this volunteer culture that lasts the test of time. I invite you guys to listen to this interview and hear what he's learned from trial and from error. So this is Josh. This is our Voices from the Field, and we're glad that you guys are joining us again for another interview, hearing voices of those that have been seasoned within the ministry and their different ideas, thoughts, and creativity. And so with this today, we have Mark, and Mark is going to be kind of talking to us about the topic that we've hit already, which is volunteers and building a healthy volunteer culture. But before I do that, this is Mark. Mark, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sweet. So right now my backdrop is I am at the Solid Rock Ranch, and this is winter or summer camp number 4 for me, where I'm speaking. Just got off the zip line because I was running that too. So I've been in youth ministry as a volunteer initially, which would have been 1979. And so a volunteer for a couple of years, and then a part-time youth pastor for a couple of years. That became a full-time role. And so I was in one location for 10 years. And during that 10-year process, right at the initial, that's where the Lord literally called me to youth. So I'm the 70-year-old youth guy. And till I can do anything, if I do anything at all, until I can't do anything at all, it'll be something to do with youth, parents, leaders, whatever. So to me, a healthy youth ministry is way beyond vital. You know, I think that's one of the challenges we face is that you look at most churches and they're not healthy because they don't have healthy youth ministries because they don't have healthy volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always been kind of my goal. It's like if I had a life statement, it would be this: just take the person to the next step. I mean, it's simple, but find out where people are at. So that was the beauty of having been a volunteer. I had a good pastor who poured into us. The youth pastor who poured into us as volunteers, helped us stay balanced, not overcommitted, gave us some good tools to work with, and kind of helped us find our sweet spot. So I had, as a volunteer, I had a probably above average experience.
Mm-hmm.
I know one volunteer, I had her do a workshop for me. She's been a volunteer at the same church through like 7 youth pastors. Yeah, exactly. She has seen, exactly. She has seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And she was very articulate about, and you could tell she was passionate. When somebody was on the ugly side of doing it wrong, she had no problem telling it. But then she also gave praise to the guys or gals who were, kind of figured out that they needed to invest in their volunteers. So, yeah. So for me, anybody I'm around, like I'm at the camp right now, I've got a bunch of resources. So I just made a pile of them out there for all the volunteers that are here, because I don't get to go home with them, but my books can go home with them. So there's always a way to invest in your volunteer.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. The episode that I just did for volunteers, it talks about the idea that, sometimes people focus on volunteers almost as in just getting warm bodies. And
Right.
It's kind of a revolving door of, people join, people leave, most of the time burnt out, most of the time upset. And I think that there's a lot of issues with building a healthy culture of volunteers.
Yes.
So when we say a healthy volunteer culture, what do you think that means to you, like specifically from your experiences?
Right. Well, one of the things I always tell people is you don't want to have a volunteer be a volunteer more than 3 to 5 hours a week. Okay. Because they still have to have families, jobs, raise their kids. I mean, whatever stage of life they're in. Because I do a lot of worldwide youth ministry training, and most youth workers around the world are volunteers. So I tell them, you're better off with 3 to 5 hours a week for 10 years than 10 hours a week for 2 years. Because every bridge you build in those 2 years will burn as soon as you're gone. So longevity is huge. And then also what we did that was really helpful in the long run, we didn't bring in volunteers quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So for example, they would say, hey, we want to be a volunteer. And the sad part was, it was always like after a camp or a retreat where kids were excited. And
Yeah.
they're thinking, oh, I want to work with kids like that. I'm like, look, they're only like that 2 or 3 weeks a year. Okay. So the real students are a little bit more challenging than that. So I would bring them in slow. So they'd fill out an app. We'd always did a background check.
Hmm.
And good thing we did, because I had one guy who had all kinds of accusations. So,
Oh
but
my
he
goodness.
tried. He
Yeah.
gave me the app, and I looked it up. I did my background, and I came back to him. I said, "Hey, I checked it out, and you got stuff on your record." He goes, "Yeah, yeah. So you probably don't want me working with youth." And I'm like, "That would be correct." So bring him in slow. And then the
Yep.
other thing we did too is, before they made any kind of commitment, because when they make a commitment, then kids start building bridges with them.
Yeah.
And if they can't follow through on their commitment, then the kid's bridge gets burned. So
Yeah.
what we would do is, I would say, okay, cool, you passed the background. Now here's what we're gonna do. We got a junior high thing going over here. We got a senior high thing here, and we got a young adult thing here. So you go to all these, and after a month, you tell me if you still want to work with youth. And if you do, which of these, age groups? Because sixth grade boys are not like 12th grade girls.
Nope.
And if you think, oh, I want to really disciple these kids, well, that's cool, but they got to recognize not every kid there wants to be discipled.
Yeah.
Because I break students down into disciples, deciders, distractors.
I
Okay,
like that.
pretty basic, right? And
Yep.
like for me, I've got a heart for the distractor. I love the distractor because I want to see him move forward. Some people just want to lock into a disciple.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. And we have places for that, and kind of how we would set things up. But if you think every kid's a disciple, oh, you're in for a surprise, a scary one. So that was a lot of it, was trying to help them find their sweet spot. And
Yeah.
in the long run, that really turned out to be beneficial. So I didn't have leaders leave unless they moved.
Yeah.
And then because we invested in them, the win was when new people came to the church. After a while, they would say, they'd start talking to other people in church. They'd say, "Hey, we want to get involved, but where should we get involved?" And they became
Yeah.
my best recruiters, because they would say, "Hey, you got to work with Mark." And they go, "Why? That's youth." He goes, "No, dude, he takes care of you."
Yeah.
Because they knew I made sure, kept them in their time frames, helped them find their sweet spot, and they're lifelong friends.
Yeah.
Even now, and just to see what they have continued to do with their lives, as far as, like, one set started a YWAM base, another one started a huge feeding program in the next town over, and I mean they're way past retirement age, but
Yeah.
they're still making good things happen. So yeah, and they were
So
pretty raw when I got them.
what would you say is a kind of an encapsulation of how you train, encourage, and retain volunteers? I hear you talking about, really helping them find their sweet spot. What are some other things that you
Right,
do to help with training, encouraging your
right.
volunteers?
I realized a lot of them had no personal life skills. They didn't book. They didn't know how to deal with conflict. So I started to realize, man, I'm a farm boy. A milking stool has 3 legs, because a three-legged stool is stable on any environment. Okay.
Hmm.
You need a four-legged stool for a completely flat one, but for any environment, 3 legs. So my 3 legs were always, how are they doing with the Lord,
Yep.
ministry skills, but then just personal life skills. Giving them that stability then gave them longevity.
That's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like even with that, that's a level of pastoring them. So like I think sometimes with our volunteers, that's what we miss this idea that they're not only there to help serve, but as leaders, we are there to help pastor them as well. So even if they're
Yeah.
helping with a youth ministry, we're pastoring some of these leaders and volunteers. And it sounds like that's kind of with those life skills and different things like that. What are some other things you did to help pastor them?
Well, the other thing I realized is they didn't know their Bibles. I didn't get saved till I was 22, and some of them had been raised in the church, and they're in their 30s, 40s, whatever, because they got kids in the youth group. And I would start to realize, what? Like, they just didn't know their Bibles. So we actually have, like, on our website, we have a Bible proficiency test that's open book. Okay, not open device, open
Yeah.
book. And because now you can look up anything on a device and AI it, but open book. But that way I could find, okay, like, they don't know their Old Testament.
Yeah.
I've heard people that mixed Old Testament Saul with New Testament Saul, and they think they're the same person. Okay, I mean, it's just they don't. So by giving them a good Bible background, I could say, hey, here's a good course you can take, or whatever. Again, just to give them a foundation, because teenagers ask the toughest questions.
Yeah.
You know, they no holds barred, man. You'll hear it all at some point. So, giving them a good Bible background, and again, just helping them find that balance of 3 to 5 hours a week, because that was part of my challenge. You know,
Yeah.
you're raising kids. Well, I had all three of my kids were either born or new during that 10-year time period. And my balance was I just kept going into the church later and later and later.
Hmm.
And finally, at year 9 and 10, I didn't go until 1 o'clock, because
Hey.
youth ministry
Yeah.
happens at night. You
Hmm.
know, and it's not just the scheduled stuff; it's the crisis calls, it's the
Yeah.
all the other stuff. So that's how I kept my family intact. And even now that my kids are married and got grandkids, our family loves getting together. So ministry did not destroy our family at all.
That's awesome.
Uh, but we had to
Yeah.
work at it. I mean, that wasn't a
Too
gimme.
too many times, yeah, you hear. I mean, I know when I had kids, that was my biggest fear is having the kids that want nothing to do with church because they saw how important church was to
Right.
daddy, and so it sounds like you did a great job being able to keep that balance, but then also, using it as an opportunity to really grow your kids. I think sometimes, especially, the more of us that are seasoned in the ministry, we've got all these things in place and we have all these ideas and we know what we're doing, and it sounds like you're building great teams and stuff. And for some people, they think it comes naturally, and what they don't realize is the times that we've failed to learn, what we're learning now. And I know there have been times that I put in volunteers when they definitely shouldn't have been put in.
Yeah.
There were times where I should have corrected volunteers and I held off because of, you don't want to deal with conflict, and then it led to deeper issues. And I'm sure
Yeah.
there's a host of different mistakes that I've made. What is a time that you feel like, hey, I didn't hit this thing like I should, and because of that, I ended up learning from it, which is a good thing, but in
Right.
the moment, it caused some issues.
Yeah. I'm trying to find a good juicy one. It's not like they're not there. I'm just trying to think of one that kind of like really torpedoed me. Um, okay, so I'll go with this one. So one of the things I realized was some of them would feel like, "Hey, I feel called to the ministry," and
Mhm.
so then I would go, "Great. Well, then in 2 months you get to do the youth service." And that ended up being a mistake several times for different reasons. Because for me, by that time, because when it was just me, I got a few kids, whatever. As it grew and we had more kids and all that, it's one thing to talk to two kids. It's another thing to talk to 20. It's another thing to talk to 100. And by the time as the group grew and these leaders would give their first talk,
Yep.
I'm ready for 25, 30 minutes, and they were done in 10. Hey, and I had to jump in there and go, "Hey, wasn't that great?" And then I'm trying to think of everything they said and
Yep.
rehash it and do all that. So that was a challenge, and I bailed them out enough to where they didn't feel like a failure.
Yeah.
And then I had another gal who did one, and she was such a good administrator and
Hmm.
had a really good attitude administrating, but I'll let her speak once,
Hmm.
because that one time, man, she pulled out her 6 shooters and she shot everybody 10 times. She was just brutal. And I'm thinking, man. And so, yeah, so that was probably if and they never end up being fatal mistakes, but
Hmm.
I didn't repeat them.
Yeah.
Is that if I let people into something too quick for what I would call a fatal failure,
Yep.
because like Peter stumbled and bumbled his whole way through the New Testament, but none of those were fatal.
Yeah.
Nobody else was relying on the mistake he made.
Hmm.
And that's where you don't want to set your leaders up to, if they do fail, it's actually like causes damage.
Yeah.
That's where if a leader does something really stupid with 15 kids, that's 15 kids
Yeah.
that you got to, walk them through. So mine were probably more in that area of being too optimistic, of
Hmm.
letting them kind of go for it.
Yeah.
Uh, well, and there are always funny things that come out. We had what we called nuke groups for like nuclear. So they were excited one time. They showed me their flyer for the event they had coming up. They're going to float the river, but they had a typo in there for nude groups. And they had already passed out all the flyers to the
Oh
kids,
my
the
goodness.
parents. So there was
Uh,
hundreds of them out there for the world to see. So, but those are, they're not fatal failures.
No, they're
Right.
not. And you learn from that. I mean, I've done the same thing where you have a student that's super excited and they want to teach and all that kind of stuff. And I remember the first time that happened, it was kind of the same thing. You set them up with a time and, hey, go for
Yeah.
it. And I think one of the things that I learned from it was I have to do, for me, myself, if I'm going to set a student up in that way, I have to do a good job coaching them.
Yes.
And so like, now when I do it, I still love doing it. Trying to make sure their heart's lined up in the right place. But then it's
Right.
like, okay, hey, next week, give me an outline. The week after, we'll kind of go over the outline. You give me a little, more of a rough draft. And then the week after that, I want you to actually stand up on the stage and I want you to preach your message to me. And then I'll kind of give you some healthy feedback. And
Sure.
by the time we've kind of done that, they have a good substantial message there. Not that I'm an expert at it, but
Oh
like you
yeah.
said, you kind of help. It's a learning thing for them, really.
Yeah.
It's because I know we joke around that my youth pastor, the first time he ever had me speak, it was a sheet of paper in front of my face, and I read word for word and did not look
Right.
up at the audience at all.
Right.
Um, and it's a learning thing, but
Oh yeah.
that's awesome that we learn from those. We learn from those as well.
Right.
What do you think is I know you've mentioned a few different people without of course naming names.
Right.
Think of one volunteer that is your like thrive story, a volunteer that, man, they exceeded your expectations. They are the
Sure.
absolute epitome of health in your thing. Brag on a volunteer that you had.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll brag on the volunteer who, when she did her little speechy talky thing, blew
Hmm.
everybody up because at the time, and she's a lifelong friend. At the time, her husband wasn't a Christian. There's just a lot going on, and I would talk with her. I said, "Hey, look, don't rag on your husband for not going to church." Well, what do you mean? He should be and I go, just don't rag on him, okay? You just be a love Jesus lady and you keep growing and he's going to see a change in you. So eventually that happened. He gave his life to Christ, was all in. He's the kind of guy that can fix anything on the planet. He can fix your computer. He can make a 3 layer double, triple chocolate torte cake. He can build a house. He can wire a boat. I mean, this guy can do anything. And so when he came on board, well, he was like super valuable. And now, she doesn't have a husband to rag on. So life's good for her. And she got to the point now, because it's kind of like every spiritual gift has an immature stage.
Hmm.
And hers definitely had an immature stage. She's an administrator to the max. You would never know it now because her people skills have caught up with her administrative abilities.
Well, that's cool. Yeah.
And it's just so cool to see her where she's at. And yeah, because like I said, it's like I had to insulate the kids from her. I had to make sure she was totally behind the scenes. And now, just throw her in the mix. Good things are going to happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's probably one, and I got a bunch of them like that where they all came in kind of raw.
Yep.
Um, yeah, but she definitely, if you looked at her now and just sat with her and talked with her, you would never guess that she was that gal, X number of years ago. So,
All right. So maybe we have different people that are listening to this or watching this, and there may be someone that's stepping into a ministry that they're completely rebuilding their volunteer base, or
sure.
someone that's stepping in that they have absolutely no one and they're like, okay, I would love to pour into volunteers, I got no one.
Right.
What would
Yeah.
be maybe one or two pieces of advice you'd give to someone in those situations?
Okay. And I almost say this is a rule. It takes 2 years to prove you're worth working with.
That's good.
Okay. I mean, I think if Jesus was a youth pastor, people go, yeah, right. Walked on water? You're kidding me. You know, you have to know the culture. They have to get to a point to trust you because nobody wants to jump on a ship that's going to sink or leave.
Yeah.
And when youth pastors come and go, they're like, well, I'm not getting on board till he proves he's worth getting on board with.
Yeah.
And some of them may bring huge talent to the story, but just the reality that, you got to prove yourself. So I was told, man, don't rush it. Don't rush it. I'm involved locally with a youth ministry network, and it's kind of cool. One of the young guys who's now past his 2 year time, now he's got a ton of volunteers. And we were having a meeting, just a few months ago. When you told me that 2 year thing, I thought you were crazy. He said, you were right. He said, I had to gut it out for 2 years. And he said, now I got more volunteers than I know what to do with. And I go, you had to prove yourself, didn't you? He goes, yeah, I did. So I say, the 2 year deal, don't rush it. And then don't make promises you can't keep.
Hmm.
If you say any kind of a promise to a leader or a student or a parent, man, you better back that up or don't say it. Because
Yeah.
that means to them, hey, I don't want to work with this guy. He can't follow through on anything.
Hmm.
Then whatever he's going to say, I don't even know if I can trust him or believe him or her. So that's the other thing. It's just, don't bite off more than you can chew. Figure out what you can do to do well. And then when that starts actually helping the students and the church builds trust in and all that kind of stuff, then you'll start getting the people that can really make a big difference. Our ministry was what it was because of the volunteers.
Yeah.
It wasn't, I mean, I had things that I could pour into and I had things that were great that I did. But if we hadn't had everything they did,
Hmm.
it's like one of my greatest stories is that few years after I left that church and I started traveling like I do, I'm at a conference and this kid comes up to me, youth pastor says, hey, Pastor Mark, isn't that incredible? I was in your youth group and now we're here at the same conference and I got my own group of kids. And I'm like, yeah. To this day, I don't know who that kid was. And it's because the volunteers raised him up.
Yeah.
I didn't personally, to my knowledge, I never personally invested in him at all. But my volunteers did. And youth pastor, and the story goes on. So to me, that's the joy of doing what I do is
Yep.
that raising up those volunteers. When I left, I'd been there 10 years. One of my guys took my place. So when I left, I didn't even have to leave. I still did winter camps for them. I took them on mission trips. So we had like a 15-year run,
That's awesome.
from when we started to when he then it transitioned to somebody else. But yeah, that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't poured into people. And
Yeah.
because I came from a non Christian background, didn't get saved till I was 22, I didn't assume anything. And then I helped them with their baggage
Yeah.
because I had stuff too. So I think that was key. Don't assume anything and help them deal with the real stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
That's awesome. Well, thank you very much. You,
you are very welcome.
I say this in the nicest way. One of my best volunteers was about 71 years old, and he was
There
the
you
most
go.
amazing volunteer. I appreciate your longevity within the ministry and just what you've poured out to so many people. So thank you for that. And it sounds like you have a really a good grasp on what healthy volunteers look like and how to build that culture. So I appreciate all of your insight and wisdom. Do you want to give a plug to a specific program that you're working with right now?
Sure. Well, what I'll do, I'll just give you my website because we got a lot of
Okay.
free resources on there, and it's just mstgo.com. So it's like
All
must
right.
go minus the U.
Okay,
So
and
MST.
we'll link that in the video.
Yeah, do that. And like I said, I got a lot of free resources on there. The Bible proficiency is on there. We've got old videos on our suicide prevention program. We're getting new videos done real quick. There's a lot of free downloads on what we learned from planting free youth ministries. There's just a ton of stuff on there. So just
That's
again,
awesome.
pour into people. So
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mark. It was
welcome.
great talking with you.
Yeah, cool. And I appreciate your project, man. Okay, good project
I
to have.
appreciate it. Thank you.